Back. George Mason University professor F.H. Buckley wants to change the way Americans look at their government. His new book, The Once and Future King, shatters traditional notions of the Founding Fathers, and it offers a startling warning about the rise of what he calls one-man rule in the age of President Obama. With us now to discuss The Once and Future King is F.H. Buckley. Professor, thanks for being with us.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me. The name, by the way, is Frank.
All right, Frank. We'll call you Frank. That makes it easier on me. Tell us about your book, and was there one specific executive order, one specific thing the president did that made you sit down and hit the keys on this one and start typing it up?
Not really. It wasn't one thing. It was just all of them put together. What got me started was I looked at rankings of freedom put out by places like Cato and Heritage, and we're dropping. We're dropping like a stone. And at the same time, I looked at countries that ranked ahead of us, and they had a different system of government. They were parliamentary. So I kind of put two and two together, and I thought, well, you know, maybe it's a structural problem, and maybe presidential governments are not good for freedom. And we've had a pretty good ride for over 225 years, but that doesn't tell you much about the future.
Yeah. The title is interesting here, and it might sound familiar to some folks. Tell us where the title came from and why you decided to go with that kind of theme.
Well, because I ripped off T.H. White, right? The the sword and the stone guy, King Arthur, and all that. And the idea of the once and future king, it's taken from an old English legend of Rex Quondam, Rex Futurus, and here's the idea. King Arthur is dead, but King Arthur will come back. And I guess my version is King George III is gone, but hey, look around the corner.
And so, you know, you're making the direct comparison there to King George III and President Obama.
Yep.
And so are you trying to say here that President Obama is the last of the line here in the American presidency?
No, there's been a slow growth of presidential power, and Obama is the principal abuser. He'll be gone in a few years, but what happens afterwards, I suspect, will be a continuation of what we've seen, which is a combination of abdication by Congress of its role and the growth of presidential power.
And really my question, Professor, is, you know, do you see the President Obama, our current president, as the last one to hold on to, the American superpower in the way that George III was the last to hold on to the English monarchy, including the colonies here in the United States?
No, it's more like I see him the first real super president, the fellow who can do almost whatever he wants, it seems. And I don't see him as the last in that train. I see in him glimmers of what the future might be, unless we could correct it.
Now, when you look at this, the president is often accused, of having this, this motivation here that he is interested in lessening the role of the United States on the globe. But then, on the other hand, a lot of people view the president as someone who's bumbling through not only his first term, but now the beginning of his second term as well. Which one do you think is more likely the case?
I suspect the first. I mean, we're guessing here. I don't know the fellow, but his desire to minimize the role of the United States is consistent with a couple of things. One is a certain embarrassment about American history, evidenced by his bowing and scraping all over the place, but also his desire to concentrate more on issues at home than issues abroad. The issue right now is Crimea, and what many people think is a pretty lackadaisical attitude on the part of the president to what's going on there. I mean, they occupy a country, and we banish a couple of people from shopping in Miami. It's not. The Russians think this is a bit of a joke.
Yeah, well, there's been the trading back and forth of the sanctions. The Obama administration put in the sanctions against Russian officials, and also Russian officials put in certain sanctions against U.S. officials as well. Looking at the situation, though, right now, the president clearly keeps reiterating the fact that the future of Ukraine is in the hands of the Ukrainian people, a line that he's repeated over and over again. That seems to be consistent, though, with a lot of the comments we get here on this show, with a lot of Americans wanting to withdraw from the foreign stage and have less of a role here. What's your take on that?
Well, there's a lot of common sense in that, but you asked me initially what's motivating Obama, and I started to say, well, gosh, if you want to really emphasize social welfare programs in this country, you got to pay for them. Now, when you spend 41% of the world's military budget, that looks like a pretty tempting place to go for social welfare, get benefits. And so my story, I guess, is it's consistent with his generally very left of center view about America, that he would want to shrink the foreign role, more or less to fund what he'd prefer to do at home.
Yeah, it's interesting take, because you can compare and contrast that type of withdrawal from the world stage with someone like Senator Rand Paul, who also talks about that. But you're saying the president wants to not cut those funds from the federal budget, just simply reapply them to domestic programs and increase the dependency and the entitlement programs here in the States.
Exactly. Rand Paul would prefer to do it to advance freedom, and Obama would prefer to do it to minimize freedom.
All right, well, tell us a little bit more about your book and where folks can get it if they want to pick up a copy.
Well, it's going to be on sale, or they'll be shipping at Amazon in a week or so. So that's we're maybe talking before the ship date, but roughly around April 1. The official release date is April 8th. So Amazon or your local bookseller would probably have it. You asked me about the contents a little bit, about the basic idea behind it.
Oh, well, we just
talked about,
really,
yeah.
when somebody reads this book, whether it's before an election or well before an election as we are right now, what do you hope they take away from it as they look at their government?
Well, what I'd like them to take away is not just a concern about where we are now with the rise of presidential power, but where it could lead to in the future. Here's the idea. Again, we've had this great run of more than 200 years, but if you look at other presidential governments across the world, they're not hospitable to freedom. In fact, compare